Hey everybody, good morning. Hope you're all doing good today. Just heading down to Grand Lake today. Got an instructional fishing trip down there. We're going to be fishing offshore, doing some deep cranking, maybe some football head jigging, and possibly some flipping the waters up down there. But basically a lot of post-spawn fishing, which is the topic of today's YouTube tutorial. And you probably noticed I'm doing a lot of these videos in my truck because, when you got young kids at home like we do, and busy fishing, busy working with sponsor stuff, other projects, there's just not a lot of time to put out these YouTube videos, aside from when I'm driving, a little bit of extra time. So that's one of the reasons you see me in my truck a lot doing it. But hey, the topic I wanted to talk about on the way to the lake down to Grand right now is post-spawn fishing and sort of some things you need to look for. And the post-spawn, like I said, it varies. Where you're at across the country, based upon your just the region that you're in and the body of water that you're fishing. Most of the lakes, like in Missouri and even all the way across the United States, TVA lakes, even some of your eastern, like North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, that type of stuff. We're now getting into the meat of the post-spawn a little bit. It's been an odd spring. Obviously, our weather patterns, we've had a lot of rain across the country. It's sort of held things up a little bit, but for the most part, the bass are done spawning, starting to move out, into those post-spawn areas. And what you want to look for, and here's the thing about it depends on the body of water you're fishing, but most of the time, after these bass get done spawning, the first 2 or 3 weeks of the post-spawn, they move sometimes deeper than they get all year long, right off the bat. And I'm not talking about every bass in the lake. I'm talking about a large percentage of them, because there's a percentage of the bass that stay shallow all the time. They're just like people, they have personalities unique to themselves. But you got a big group of fish that want to move deep, and they want to, not only hug the bottom, but they'll suspend as well based upon the water clarity. One of the things that you'll notice if you fish a lot of really clear water lakes is during the post-spawn, the bass will move out deeper and they suspend, very similar to how they do, in the pre-spawn for a little bit of time. But if you've got water visibility that's like, say, less than 4 feet, a lot of those fish will move out deeper and get on the bottom. But what you're looking for this time of year is classic offshore structure in deeper water. And like I said, deep is relative to the water clarity that you're fishing. A lake like, I'm using around here where I live, a lake like Bull Shoals or Table Rock, deep can be 40 to 50 feet. And if you're fishing, an off-colored water like some of the northeast Oklahoma lakes, deep could be, 15, possibly 20 feet, depending upon the water clarity. But most of the time, here's what you need to look for during the post-spawn. This is the time of year that you really, really have to get comfortable with your electronics. And there's 2 ways that you could basically hunt for these fish. You can basically look and fish the hard structure, or you can go out specifically and look for groups of fish on the locators, depending upon how comfortable you are with your equipment and how good you are with it. But the best piece of advice I can give you for finding good offshore post-spawn areas is you want to stay on the flatter areas, the flatter banks. These fish on most lakes, they like to go to the flatter offshore structure, and there doesn't really have to be much of a break or drop off of there. I mean, it's nice if you have some type of a break, but they don't necessarily have to have a break. You can basically get on a lot of flat banks, get out there in that, like I said, 10 to 40 foot range, depending upon your water clarity, and just start fishing. Small swim baits, dragging a football head, fishing a big worm, fishing a big crankbait, however you like to fish. If you can pick up specifically on like some small breaks that, drop, say 3 to 10 feet, that's even better. But the problem with those type of areas, for the most part, is they really get hit hard, since GPS mapping is so good right now. So what you want to do is you want to try to find those subtle areas, the real subtle breaks, and those fish that are sort of using the out of the way areas. Now, another thing that doesn't really come into play that much during the early post spawn is man-made brush. I know that in this part of the country down here, if you're not fishing man-made brush like late June, first part of July, on through the early fall, you can't win a tournament hardly. It's all about the planted brush. But when those fish first come off the bed and they get deep, a lot of times they won't go right to that brush. They just get out there and sort of hang on those flatter, deeper waters, sort of recuperating. And like I said, it all depends on water clarity, so it's all relative to that. You can take a lake like Bull Shoals Lake that has these super deep flats, and you can get out there and idle around, in 40 to 60 feet, and you can see these bass suspended out there over that deep water, in that super clear water. Where if you go to a lake like you can go to, Truman Lake in Missouri, or Lake Eufaula in Alabama, someplace like that, or even some of the TVA lakes, you're not going to see those bass suspended high in the water column. If anything, they're just going to be suspended a few foot above the bottom. So that's another thing to remember. Lure technique wise, this time of year during the post spawn, the first thing that I like to do when I roll up onto an area is throw a big crankbait. I like the Mega Bass Deep 6 crankbait. That's really good. Gets down there about 20 feet on a 8 or 10 pound line. And normally what happens is the biggest, most aggressive bass in a school will hit a crankbait first. And it just triggers those bigger fish to hit. And after, I saturate the area with a crankbait, I may come back through it like with a football head jig, a big swim bait, a spoon, a big worm, something like that, fishing a little bit slower. But early in the post spawn, like we are, early to just starting to get in the post spawn like we are right now, that's the time of year they hit those big crankbaits better than anything else. And you'll find as the summer wears on, they don't bite the big crankbaits as good as they do the other stuff, like the big shaky heads or the big worms or the football heads. They get more on those slow baits than they do the big crankbaits. But that's, like I said, that's what I'm going to do down here at Grand today. I'm going to throw a lot of big crankbaits, down here, because everything's just set up, pretty much, for that type of deal. But, like I said, there's a couple different keys to it. In addition to the bait selection I told you about, I just can't stress enough to spend some time on your electronics. And everybody knows, I've talked a lot about it in my YouTube videos. I'm not a big fan of, electronics and electronic technology. But I want to sort of reiterate the fact that I'm not against electronics. I'm against how expensive it is to keep up with electronic technology. That's what I'm against, is how it's just ridiculous how much this stuff costs to keep up with it. But you don't have to have like this, incredible tens of thousands of dollars worth of electronics. You can get by with just a modest unit, even 2D sonar. Even if you got like a $400 or $500 2D sonar unit, you can still do a lot with that unit. So the thing that you want to do with that is you want to spend your time graphing around, even like you said, even if you're just using 2D, and spend a lot of time on your mapping. Make sure that you have good good chips that really show you some detailed tight contours. And that's what it's all about. It's getting really a lay of that underwater structure, how those fish are setting up, and being able to find those subtle areas off the bank. So anyway, like I said, post spawn, we're in the middle of it right now. I used to really like the post spawn a lot before the advent of all the the high-tech electronics and GPS mapping. Back in the days where you just had to use a paper map and a flasher, I spent a lot of time doing that, before a lot of other people did. But it's really gotten taken to a new level right now. And if you don't spend a lot of time on it, you can get left behind, because fishing offshore is a commitment. You just can't go out there and try it for an hour or two and expect to get good at it. It's something that you have to get out there and do all day long and spend a lot of time on the water, and you have to decide if you want to make that commitment to fishing offshore. Now, I will say one thing, about the post spawn too, is, don't feel like because the fish are in a post spawn that you have to get out there and fish off the bank, because you don't. If you're a shallow water power fisherman, which a lot of people are, probably more than not, there's a lot of other options to catch them. This time of year is a great time of year to throw topwater bait. There's still good flipping bites going on. You just have to look for that type of water. You have to get into those areas that has the shallow cover, a little bit more off-colored water, and you can do well on that, because unless you're on a lake like a Gunnersville or a Kentucky lake or something like that, where 95% of the cover is offshore, and those offshore techniques dominate, you can still do well shallow about anywhere in the country. So anyway, just a few tips. Hope everybody's doing really good. Like I said, hadn't had a chance to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button. I'd really appreciate that. Everything's going good around here, getting ready for our Bass Open. Next week I'm leaving for it down at Muskogee at the Arkansas River. I've never fished down there before at the Muskogee pool. I fished Kerr, which is the one behind it, or the one east of it. But this will be a new body of water for me down there. And on top of that, I'm still working with Johnny Schultz a lot on his Fish of the Moment website. We're making the lake map breakdowns, which are really cool. If you guys haven't checked it out, just go to fishthemoment.com and go to the lake breakdown section, and we're making maps of lakes all over the country, and identifying 60 areas on each map based upon the season that you go there. It gives you a really good starting point and a real understanding of how to approach and attack a lake. Whether you've been there or not, been there or not, it's a really good learning tool. So anyway, you check out now. I'm going to get down here at Grand, and hope everybody has a good day. See y'all.